Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of SuperCoach, mates. Well, round 10 is done and dusted. I have been venting off camera to Thomas about some of the Saints players who have massively let me down the past week. So I have no doubt that as we go through the recording, you'll probably hear me say that to you guys. So I guess we're at a bit of a odd stage now, given that the buys are coming up in just a few weeks. So I think most sides would probably want to have, at least a full-ish or, maybe one or two rookies left on the field, after the buys. So as per normal, I am joined by Thomas. How are you going, Thomas? Good win by the Saints on the weekend.
Yeah, kind of a standard win, I guess, which is nice to see that we're not having these games where we're expected to win and basically fall apart, either crawl over the line or lose. So, yeah, nice to see. We've done that a few weeks now where teams are expected to beat up on. We've done so. Nice to see, but, yeah, tough month of footy coming up with, probably the top three sides in the team comp at the moment coming up. So, yeah, we'll see how we go in that month of footy for sure.
Yeah, so as per normal, we're going to do a comparison between the three sides. So obviously Thomas will have his side and the SC community mate side up. And then on my second screen, which you guys can't see, I've also got my own side. So I will just chip in where I can. So I'm going to hand it over to Thomas to do the fun stuff.
Yeah, so I guess it's kind of flipped a little bit this week. Definitely frustrating round for the community side. It didn't help at all with Jackson as vice captain. I initially thought it might have been my mistake actually, because I think I thought I had it on Butters as VC and was going to take it. And then when I logged into the account, I still had it on Bontempelli. So that was my bad. But I guess a lot of super coaches were in the same boat where, Bontempelli kind of failed you, or even, Heaney as well didn't do so well. So, yeah, you left it at Jackson and you assumed, most people assume that he'd go bananas against Essendon. And then, Essendon has his habit of limiting opposition ruck somehow. Not sure exactly how they do it because they don't really have a defined ruckman, but they do quite well at it. And Jackson, 66 was definitely disappointing. And we probably weren't the only people.
I know why he didn't score well.
Yeah. We'll maybe leave that ruck section of the podcast, Nate. But
I know why I didn't score well when we get to the ruck side. Why, but
definitely frustrating. But yeah, my own side personally down the bottom right hand corner, definitely much better. 2350, definitely helped by Brody Grundy scoring close to 200 as a vice captain. So he gladly took that score, and that shot me up the rankings. Basically, halved my ranking to get me back in the top 10k from a personal side, which was positive. And then didn't drop as bad as I thought it was for the community side, that's for sure. Because I thought we were going to drop well back down to the 5k mark with that shocking score. But a lot of people seem to have that issue with poor captaincy scores. And I think that helped that, if you didn't have that and had Grundy, for example, as captain, even Butters, you're pretty much guaranteed to get a green arrow. And I think because so many people had it on the likes of Jackson and Bont, you probably didn't drop as much as you would have expected. But moving on to our defenders as per normal. So I've now put in the titles to make it a bit easier if you're watching on YouTube to differentiate which one's which, because the teams are a little bit similar with some players. Archie Roberts was the trade-in for both teams this week. And yeah, he was very frustrating. I guess Essendon got absolutely pantsed by Freo on the G. But I guess the benefit with Roberts is he just scores for fun at the moment with his super friendly role. And even, he was looking at a sub 80 and he still pumped out just under 100. So I think he's a must in your sides, regardless. Probably ekes up that break even a little bit with that poorer score, but plays Richmond this weekend. And he's got my vice captain at the moment, currently in my own side, because, he just can grab 40 disposals for fun at the moment. Lockie Whitfield got the Malam Murdoch tag, which we'll talk about a little bit later, which was definitely frustrating. Because when he didn't have that tag, he dominated. So he dominated in patches and was very, very quiet in odds when Murdoch was around him at basically every position he could have gotten, which was basically infuriating for owners, because Lockie Ash did very well when he didn't have the tag either. Sinclair, as expected, I think, without Naz starting to really flourish off that halfback role and pushing forward more aggressively. Dan Houston and Dacos in the SCMates community side is definitely frustrating. Own Houston, not so much because he was priced a bit cheaper, but Josh Dacos, I'm not sure entirely what's going on there. We'll get Nathan's opinion on that in a minute, but yeah, he's one that just I thought he was going to flourish in perhaps a more mid-dominant position, but his score is kind of similar to last season where he has the odd, 120 plus game and then deviates around the 80 to 90 mark, which is definitely frustrating. We got rid of what's the West Coast defender's name? Forgot his name. Anyway, it'll come to me in a minute. But we got rid of him and kept Kitty Coleman, who got 82, which can't complain. He probably is on the shopping block soon. Jordan Clark in my own side, very, very frustrating considering he started very well. He's one that's been pretty much a failed pick. Yes, he's still averaging 95, but I probably should have learnt from my mistake last season of understanding the frustrations around him as a pick. But I mean, you can't complain at this point in time with how dicey some of the other positions are. I guess you keep him if you have him. And Jack Carroll, I had him on my field for that specific reason against Richmond, and he definitely delivered, scoring a 105. So he's obviously going to make cash for a few more weeks longer. And Blamire he's on the chopping block. He should have been gone last week, but I couldn't get him out. So he's definitely gone for a defensive rookie. But what are your thoughts, Nathan? How did your defensive line go? And yeah, what are your thoughts particularly about these Collingwood defenders who just seem to be scoring pretty mediocrely, if that's even a word? Yeah.
Well, yeah, so I had Sinclair, so obviously I was happy with that. I'm also in the Houston camp. I think Houston and Dacos, I think this is just going to be a bit of an ongoing thing for the whole year. I know that the SCG is perceived as a smaller ground. So perhaps there wasn't as much space there for Houston and Dacos to, sort of really, cash in terms of, their ball use. So I wouldn't be too bothered with Houston especially, but yeah, obviously it's frustrating. The one for me that's frustrating is Tom McCarthy. Obviously, only scored the 44, which, when we get on to the other positions, there's a few St Kilda players who are very much in my no good list. So one I'm glad I kept, I think this is what Thomas might have been alluding to before, was Josh Lindsay, who's a West Coast defender who got 96 on the weekend. So I'm glad I kept him. His break even is 56. So playing against Collingwood, he probably should be able to get that. Jai Sarong still going well. And then Jed Buslinger, he's been a bit disappointing the last couple of weeks. And then obviously I've still got a few rookies on the bench in Farrow and Grill. So I think for me, I think the defense is probably the line I need to upgrade the most. So it's just whether or not I can get Farrow or Grill up to one of those higher priced rookies. Higher priced premiums. That will determine that. But I think right now, out of the lines, I think my defense is probably the weaker line now. So yeah, I think that's probably where I'll need to invest in the next, upgrade there. So I'm not quite sure yet which path I'm going to go down. But yeah, I definitely think that there's, that there's thing to make. I think Luke Parker's quite appealing at just under 500k. So perhaps, he might be an option that I have a look at. I don't think I can quite get Archie Roberts, who's probably the one that I would want to get. I think he's probably beyond what I can afford. So, yeah, I think for me it'll be probably Luke Parker. The other one that's a bit left of centre, I don't know if I can trust myself to go down the St Kilda path again, but I actually don't mind the form of Carl Wilkie this year. I think he's a bit of a point of difference. He's only in 4% of sides. So yeah, I don't mind him as a bit of point of difference. So, I think I think I'll probably end up settling on Parker if I do trade someone out, if I can find the funds for it. But yeah, I think the back line for me right now is probably the biggest concern, which it looks like the two sides on the screen here, their back lines are quite good. So I think mine's probably a bit behind. So I think it's probably time for me to get a bit of a wriggle on with them.
Yeah, Luke Parker, I think's found a new lease of life down back, and obviously Cal Wilkie, as a Saints supporter, is the reason why he's so cheap. He's obviously because that back injury he sustained the week prior in the Gold Coast game. So yeah, has a break even about 145 ish. So you could probably wait another week on him as well and get him even cheaper, because he's going to get a tough matchup against Freo, obviously. So yeah, it could be one to wait, but yeah, Wilkie's been uber consistent. I think that translates nicely because of the situation with him pushing in the midfield. But moving on to the midfield, as we're talking about it, yeah, this was kind of where it all fell apart in both sides, I think, and I guess across the board on the weekend. Butters was pretty much the only one that scored nicely. Bontempelli, look, I think the Dogs have serious concerns with when English is not playing, and yeah, obviously Carlton had a point to prove with Josh Frazier at the helm, and I think, yeah, but didn't expect Bond to score that poorly, but I think the whole Dogs lineup just got absolutely carted in that last quarter, because Bond started quite well. But I think, yeah, there are some slight concerns to be had when English isn't playing, just because the Dogs midfield brigade don't get first use of it. I think that's the most frustrating part as an owner. Lockie Neal had the O'Shea Mullen tag, so I was very happy to get a 93 and get away with it, considering that McCluggage scored sub 60 and didn't have the tag. So, yeah, that kind of probably summed up how the weekend went in general. But, yeah, Neal's probably almost close to his career best form again with how well he's going. And I think the way he handled that tag was quite impressive. As much as he probably wasn't as damaging with his touches and whatnot, to get him as well was probably a nice thing to have. As an owner, Dacos, let Nathan talk about it as a Pie supporter, hasn't been that impressive, I think, on the eye test with him. I think if you didn't start him for whatever reason, this is probably the perfect time to jump on if you want. Those high scores are a bit far and few between them a little bit as well, which is frustrating for owners. But I'm sure he'll turn it around sooner rather than later. Sammy Walsh, in my own side, is a very frustrating owner. I did say last week that you have these situations where he probably just cop it because his ceiling is so high. Well, a 79 is exactly what you don't want, especially in a winning side. I don't exactly know what went wrong with Walsh, because it wasn't like he was copying too much attention, but he's one that I think if I had the trades, I'd definitely trade him out, but I think I'm just going to keep on to him for the time being. Dersma, I mean, he's probably made his money now. He's been really impressive. I think I'm going to get rid of him for this week, potentially for a Sarong or Wilkie. Milan Murdoch, I think if he continues this tag thing, I think there's big issues around his scoring potential, because without the tag, he's pretty much one of the best rookies going around with scoring. But with the tagging duties and responsibilities, I think there's a big red flag next to his name. And I think, yeah, I wouldn't blame you if you want to get rid of him this week, because his break even crept up to about 55. So he's probably not going to make too much money unless he pumps out a few more of his 90s. Anderson was a nice replacement to have with Sardis not getting a game, so I took Anderson 71 on that Friday night. And then, yeah, in the SCMates team, Heaney, I think the reason why he got 99, he was stuck on the bench for ages in that last quarter. I was here on the radio on my drive back home on Friday night, and I guess that was a little bit frustrating for owners. Not a big problem. I think Heaney's still one of the uber premiums of the competition. Max Holmes keeps chugging away nicely. I think he's almost a must-have, so probably save one of your spots in the defensive line, because he's going to get that DPP, I think, just maybe. I hope so anyway. So I think if he does get that DPP next round, or I think in end of round 12 or whatever it is, he's a must-have in your defensive line with how well he can go. Merritt's probably been super frustrating. He's getting the scores that you want to be consistent, but I think just the way with how Eston going and how checked out some of those senior players do look at the Bombers, I think there are red flags with regards to what could happen with them down the track, whether, Brad Scott decides to start dropping people. I don't know. I'm not saying Merritt will get dropped, but potentially. And I don't see these 120s being as consistent. And he's more, yes, he's got an average of 115, so he's not a red flag just of yet. But there's better options probably out there if you want to trade in a mid. And yeah, that's generally how my midfield went. How's your midfield looking, Nathan? And I guess what are your thoughts around this Dacos situation? That probably alongside some other midfield premiums, there are probably some red flags around their scoring at the moment with how low it's been.
Yeah, well, I actually seem to dodge a lot of the carnage last week around the midfield. So obviously I had Nick. Obviously I had Nick. So I think the biggest problem with Nick right now, is his disposal this year has been horrible. So if I just quickly get this up. Let's do a show all real quick. So this year, Nick Dacos is averaging 7, nearly 8 turnovers a game this year. Now, that's not generally conclusive with someone who has high impact. But unfortunately, he's just not, he's just not doing it well. His disposal attention percentage is only 62% as well. But I think it's the damage. I think it's the actual damage with it. So, I've got Bailey Smith here. So Bailey Smith's had the second most turnovers. So he's averaging 7 turnovers a week. But then his retention percentage is 64%, which again isn't much better. But it's probably an extra 1 or 2 disposals. Across a game, but then he's inside 50 retention rate is 50%, whereas Nick's is only 35%. So I think that's basically the difference right now between Nick and Bailey Smith, is that I think Bailey Smith's getting the job done, and Nick Dacos isn't really getting the job done with his disposals. So I think you've just got to stick with him. I think you've just got to accept that that part of being one of the better players in the league is that you are going to get tagged from most weeks. So I think this is just something we're going to have to live with. Outside of that, my midfield actually did quite well. So obviously I had Butters. Bond. I think Bond is really badly injured. I think the Dogs are not going well defensively. And I think Saturday night sort of proved that they're probably a rung below the best sides, just given the fact that they were basically they really should have beaten Carlton and they didn't, even with their injuries. And then Merritt and Sarong and Parrish is still doing a job. Tanner Bruin, I think for me, is perhaps on the chopping block. I haven't decided yet which way I'm going to go with him. I think I think if I can somehow figure out how to use him to get to one of those higher priced defenders, I think I'm probably going to have a look at that, just to sort of see what the side looks like. And then it's basically Murdoch. I agree. I think if he keeps tagging, that's the problem. And I've still got the rookies. So I've got Rechko, Angry Anderson, and Cumming, who are all, I think, doing quite well. So yeah, I think outside of Bond and Dacos, I think my midfield is doing quite well. So I think out of all the lines, I think my midfield's probably the best one, which is a surprise because normally I'm always a bit behind in the midfield. So yeah, I think my midfield I'm quite happy with. It's just a question of what I decide to do with Tanner Bruin, whether or not I move him up to one of those sort of one of those higher priced defenders, because I think I'm probably lacking there.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, Tanner Bruin's probably safe to go. Yeah, I think Milan Murdoch's days are numbered if he continues this tagging rubbish. And Rechko probably looks the safest of the three if you want an emergency midfielder. Anderson obviously is not bad for the Pies, but Burton and Cumming, which was an argument I guess people both look pretty bad. Cumming looks pretty lost in that midfield there, as we spoke about last week. I think he was a mistake at that price, and Burton as a rookie-based player, I guess for me, is not too bad because I didn't obviously lose much out of getting him. But moving on to the ruck line, this is where it really differed in teams, and I guess if you look at the community team and my own team, that's probably where the differentiation sat with Grundy with a 203. That doubles very quickly to a 400-point buffer, and then Luke Jackson with a 66 that doubles to 132. So you look at that difference, it's crazy. That probably cost a lot of super coaches this round. You look at that difference in itself is 300 points there right in front of you. So it's definitely frustrating as owners. Gorn keeps chipping away. I think it's a positive that he keeps scoring nicely, even with this Max Heath stuff going around. I don't know if Max Heath is playing this week because I don't know if he entered protocol concussions.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. Good thing for Gorn owners there to maybe get a big score, especially if English doesn't play this weekend. But what are your thoughts, Nathan? Obviously, you're a bit fuming with how De Koning went and you traded him out. So I guess you got Gorn in, which is a positive. But I think one person that people are looking at that you could probably shed a bit of light on is Darcy Cameron. Obviously, Oscar Steen, it's been confirmed he's had his ACL rupture, so he's out of the year. Obviously, Collingwood need Cameron to fire for them to make a push for finals, a wild card and whatnot. What are your thoughts on Cameron? Because he's priced pretty cheap and he doesn't cost much at all to side swap from McAndrew. Could he be a decent flex play for the rest of the season if you don't want to, take out a house mortgage to bring in a Sherry or whatnot?
Nah, I'd be avoiding Cameron. I think you just look at Collingwood before Steen came in and they were a mess in their midfield. As soon as Oscar Steen came in, it sort of started, to sort of even out a bit. But now that he's gone for the year, I don't think Darcy Cameron is suited by these new rules. I think he was definitely more of a wrestling type ruckman. So, he might get away with it this week against West Coast. But yeah, then he's got the Dogs, so he might get away with it there as well, given the Dogs ruck stocks. Although it does depend on Tim English.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's King's birthday, so yeah, I personally I don't think I could bring in Darcy Cameron. I've always maintained that I think if you're gonna go for a flex option, I think it has to be the third member of that Gorn, Grundy, Jackson trio if you can manage it. I just think it's so much safer to have that. I mean, if you had all three this weekend, I mean, I know most people probably would have two of Gorn or Grundy or Jackson by now. So, if you had all three, I think you're probably going to be, getting 120 odd most weeks. So, that's 400 points you can bank on. I wouldn't be too concerned about Luke Jackson either. So I did allude this off the top of the about Luke Jackson. So on the weekend, so obviously for those of you who live outside Melbourne, it was a very cold and wet weekend in Melbourne. So in terms of the ruck contest, so there were only 79 ruck contests in that game, which for both sides, which is the fourth lowest for Fremantle across the year. But of those 79, so 35 hitouts is a great return. But out of those 35 hitouts, only 11 of them resulted in a clearance to Fremantle, which is by far and away the lowest for Fremantle this year. So the league average is about 43% of your hitouts go and get turned into a clearance. So Fremantle only went at 31. So I wouldn't be too concerned about Luke Jackson. I think Thomas alluded to this last week about Essendon, sort of being okay at negating opposition ruckmen given their own ruck issues. I wish I had listened to him like the community side because it ended up costing us dearly having the captaincy on Luke Jackson. But yes, as Thomas alluded to off the top, for those of you who are unaware, I did have Tom DeConing from round one. I've kept him the whole year. I traded him out last week to get Gorn in, and not only did he outscore Gorn by 1 point, but his break even now is in the 40s, and I think he's projected to go up about 25k. So Tom DeConing can officially get stuffed.
Yeah, that's understandable, Nathan. I guess definitely frustrating as a owner for 9 weeks or whatever that you had him, that he was not doing well with Ryan Marshall, and the logical kind of answer to that is that you get rid of him and get him for bona fide ruckman, and here we are. Gone and he outscores you, but I guess that's the nature of SuperCoach. It always happens when you trade out a player. But moving on to the forward line as we get towards the end of today's episode. The forward line is a bit all over the place at the moment. It's very hard to nail exactly who you want as the top six, which I guess is a good thing because you can kind of go in different areas compared to your mids or defenders. I mean, the mainstays, Petrarca, Sheasel. Sheasel looks a little bit concerning with how he went, but North got absolutely mauled apart by the Crows, so you can't complain too much. I think his disposal efficiency is killing him a little bit. But you're never really going to trade Petrarca or Sheasel out of your side for the whole year, regardless of how they go, bar injury. Pickett's been a really frustrating own for me in the last fortnight. I got him in for the Richmond game, so can't complain too much there because he went bananas in that game. But ever since then, he got tagged the week before against West Coast, and then this week got tagged again. So yeah, definitely frustrating for owners there. When he gets tagged, he's almost non-existent, I think. The way the D's are going at the moment as well, I don't think they need Cozzy to do much if he does cop attention. So one to watch a little bit. I think you still want him in your final side with how talented the man is. But yeah, you're probably going to get him at a lot cheaper price now. He's back-to-back 60s. Flanders was a watch I saw on Twitter earlier today about potential and injury concern as he was running laps away from the main group, but he seems to be on the plane to Perth. So no dramas there. He's looked really impressive, I think, from a viewership point of view. As a St Kilda supporter, he seems to be playing a bit more like how he did at the Suns when he was playing off halfback and had his best season. He's not obviously playing that halfback role, but he's kind of rolling in as a midfielder from the back line in transitional play. So I think that's where he gets a lot of his disposals, and he's playing, with more and more confidence each week, which is really what you want to see. And I think he's going to be a keeper there. Every week, this is going to frustrate the fuck out of me, I think, between Rochelle and Rankin. Rankin, I thought, was going to get tagged in that North game, but lo and behold, he gets a 110. And Rochelle wasn't too bad. I'll give him credit where credit's due, but he's been super frustrating. I think they're committing at this stage to play Rankin in the midfield ahead of Rochelle, which is definitely frustrating because when they play both of them, they look electric, but I don't think that's sustainable for that midfield, I think, defensively speaking. So, it's one that I think I'm going to keep there as long as I can, Rochelle, and I'll get rid of him if I get an extra trade, but I think he's probably not bad as an X factor. Braden Cook, super consistent as always. Philippou was always going to probably have a spike game in there against Richmond. 82 is probably standard. He was on about 40 at quarter time, so he's one that probably has bursts and doesn't really solidify his scoring. Lombard had a 90 out of nowhere, which was nice to have that cash generation reset, which was nice to see. And Murphy Reid in the SCMates community side just keeps on keeping on. I think he's one that's never really going to get 110, 120, but he's a consistent enough player in there that can comfortably be my F6 and probably is a better F6 than Rochelle, that's for sure. McAndrew also was very dominant in that flex position. He was one that was in trade plans for both sides, I think, and luckily kept him. Actually looked really good against Sherry. So he's one that I think you can comfortably save from now on in if you do want to keep him as long as possible. He's not really going to get overawed by the bigger rucks, and he's definitely good enough to hold his own. He's that real awkward, lanky type that is very athletic and has provided, first use for the Adelaide midfield brigade, that's for sure. But Nathan, how's your forward line going, and what are your thoughts on some of these speculative picks, I think, that people might have to go down to finish off their forward line?
Yeah, well, I've got Petrarca and Cheezel, so I have no doubt that they're going to stay in there. Petrarca is still the second highest rated player in the year, across the year. Only Isaac Heaney's ahead of him. So, if 94's, sort of your low bar, playing up in Darwin, it's not ideal. So I'm not surprised that he's had two sort of lower games, but back at Marvel underneath the roof, I can see him really thriving in those conditions. So break even is 150. I don't know if he's going to quite get that, but I think he might be a bit of a left field option if you want a vice captain this week. Unless he cops this Finn O'Sullivan tag. Sheasel, I would just ride it with Sheasel. I think North Melbourne, unfortunately, with their development, I think they're going to have those types of games where they get blitzed. They haven't won at Adelaide Oval. Their average losing margin there is about 50 points. So I'm not really too bothered by that. I've got the same thing with Shea Bolton. A bit of a roller coaster along with Pickett and most of those forwards. They're good one week and then they're sort of, a bit average the next. Flanders, I've enjoyed him the last couple of weeks. De Goey's really spiked, so obviously I've kept him. So his break even's now 17, and they're playing Collingwood are playing the emotion charged game against the Eagles. So, I wouldn't be surprised if the guy puts on a bit of a show. I think they're expecting 90 plus thousand there. Obviously for Pendlebury's record breaking game, of which I will be one of those people there. So I'm looking forward to celebrating the day and, for what it's worth. But yeah, obviously I'm hoping that my SuperCoach players do well. So Harry Sharp's sort of fallen off a bit the past couple of weeks. I think he's probably time to go. And then obviously Tom Marshall's not playing. The other one that can get stuff from St Kilda is Liam Henry. So I have the choice of either keeping Edwards and taking Zach Butters' score, or bringing in Henry and hoping that that Jackson could get around that, and like the point difference between the two wouldn't be too great. So of course there's a 38-point difference there between between what Jackson scored, what Jackson and Henry scored, and then what Butters scored on his own. And if I didn't bring Henry in, I would have taken Zach Butters as 138. So Zach Butters can officially get stuffed as well. And then for some weird unknown reason, I've still got Leo Lombard just sitting there in my flex position. So the past couple of weeks, he has gone absolutely gangbusters. He's gone 57 and then a 90. So his break even is now down at 17. So I think, with all the carnage and stuff, I think just getting him and perhaps persisting with him has proven to be a good thing, because I think there's a lot more money to be made there. But yes, I think for me, I think this week it's definitely going to be an operation. How do I work out this defense a bit more? But yeah, I think that's pretty much sort of where I sit with everything at the minute. So yeah, as I said, I've already sort of divulged a bit of what I'm going to do trade-wise this week. Have you got any trades that you're looking at this week, Thomas?
Yeah, sure do. I'm just going to bring up the AFL website because I'm hoping to see one of the Hawks defenders named, and hopefully...
Is that Bodie Ryan?
Yeah, probably.
Yes, he's been named.
Yeah, Bodie... Where is he? Bodie Ryan off the half-back, which is nice. Flynn Perez was listed, but he's an emergency. Yeah, Bodie Ryan, lock him in as a defender, I think. Look, there's not many good options. I know Jack Ison from the Blues had a very, very positive debut, but I think it'll be more beneficial to hold him off for a week. Obviously, I know when it gets desperate, you look at, can you go early in the rookies? But I think you want to be very careful with that, because if you're not super confident on it, as Nathan keeps telling you, every episode it can go pear-shaped very quickly, but also if you play that cycle of getting in a rookie early, then it keeps happening. Then you end up running out of rookies to trade in. I think we're going to be blessed a little bit with Banfield and Ison next week, which could be quite nice. And I've got to boost up my sleeve to facilitate that. So Bodie Ryan comes straight in for Blameries, I think will probably be the trade. And then gets a bit dicey because there's a couple options I could go. I could go Cal Wilkie and finalise my defensive line, which looks likely. But I also don't mind Sarong. I know he's been a frustrating owner. I think, Nathan, you have him, don't you?
Yeah, well, I've got an interesting stat here about Sarong. So far this year, when he wins a clearance, Fremantle is scoring. I think it's like 40% of the time, which is actually the second most in the league. So when he can do his work, he's very efficient at it, and he's very strong at it. But the problem is that he's just a bit inconsistent with it. Sarong, but yes, I do have him.
Yeah, look, I don't know. I think 460 for Wilkie is a very good price, but his break even's 150, and he plays Freo, which I have my serious doubts on how our backline's probably going to stack up. I think Wilkie's going to have to be a lot more one-on-one. I don't think that's going to be a huge issue in his score, but I don't expect the 120 out of his ass very quickly. And Sarong plays St Kilda, and I think, yes, he might get tagged a little bit, but I don't mind that price at all. It's a situation that, I'd be frustrated as hell if I owned him, but at 460k, he does entice me a lot, and he gives me 100k to play with in the week after. So I think I'm leaning towards Sarong and just hoping that he can, I owned him last season, so I know the frustration of owning him, but he does look really impressive when he gets that first-hand clearance on the ball, and he's by far and away a better option than Brayshaw at the moment. But yeah, I think the other options there, Rankin, I guess, in the forward line, if you want to go down that route, I think he's one of those players that, if he does badly, he can go crashing down very, very quickly. He's one that can string a few poor scores together, and he's injury prone. I can't see his body holding up in that midfield full time. I know in that previous, not this week, but last week's game, he cramped up severely. And I think the commentator suggested it was a hamstring. So there was concern straight away. So I think there's a little bit of a red flag on Rankin if you want to go down that route. Yes, he's probably going to be in the top 6 anyway. Definitely a better option than Myra Shelley. But I think for me, it's between Wilkie and Sarong this week. What are your thoughts on your trades, Nathan?
Yeah, well, I think for me, it's going to be probably the back line for sure. So I think Luke Park is probably going to be the way that I go. I can afford Archie Roberts, but then it's sort of, I can probably use the 100k elsewhere. Yeah. So I think that's sort of the conundrum that I'm going to have is, do I go down the Luke Parker path, or do I go down the Archie Roberts path and basically have nothing left to play with? So I think right now, I'm leaning more towards the Luke Parker path. The Suns don't tag, so that's probably a good sign for Parker and Sheasel this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think for mine, it's probably going to be just the two there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the third one for mine will be if I can pull it off. I don't think I'm going to be able to, but I'm perhaps going to have a look at another midfielder.
Yeah.
So I think if I didn't have him already, I think Sarong I could probably just about go Murdoch up to Sarong. So I sort of don't know if there's anyone else around that price. I mean, I don't know how much he is now. How much?
Sarong.
Yeah, it's the same. No, it's the Sam Walsh is 481 with a break even of 118.
Yeah.
If he's projected to score 94, so he's projected to drop, another 10 or so K. Perhaps with the new fresh of life at Carlton, perhaps he can get on a bit of a roll. So he's perhaps one that I would consider as a bit of a left field option, but yeah, I don't think I'm in a position, unfortunately, to be able to get those higher price midfielders. I would definitely say to you, Thomas. So you've got 5 sort of premium defenders, don't you, already?
Let me bring it up quickly. Yeah, I do. I've got.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
because I think Max Holmes is probably going to get DPP eligibility, so I would probably be inclined to hold out on that Wilkie trade in your situation,
Yeah.
just because of the fact that you've probably already got Holmes. I think I saw you already had Holmes anyway,
Yep.
so you effectively complete anyway if as long as Holmes doesn't spend too much time out of that back half.
Yeah.
And I think I'd probably much rather have another midfielder than a key defender. I think in my situation though, because I haven't quite got that full line, and I haven't actually even got Holmes to begin with. He's perhaps one that I might look at as an upgrade for Lindsay or Sarong when they sort of max out. They're not quite there yet. So yeah, I think for mine, I think my trades this week, are going to be the Luke Parker one, and then ideally I'd like to get Harry Sharp up to one of those sort of forwards, or Murdoch up to one of those, falling midfielders. I think that's sort of where I would look for the third option for my side this week. So I guess the players I can afford, I don't know. No, there used to be some way I could do that. So I've got basically whatever Sharp is in another 100k. So there's probably a few good guys I can get. So I think Warner's probably a bit inconsistent, but as a forward, I think you could probably wear that. The one I've got my eye on is Jason Horne-Francis. Ever since that game he played against Geelong, or whenever it was a few weeks ago, ever since that game against Geelong a few weeks ago, he's just fallen right off the cliff. So I think he's going to be a really good option in a few weeks if he can just get himself, back in the groove of playing again. I think Carlton are a good matchup for him. There might be a few more stoppages and whatnot. I think that's sort of my plans for the week. Just quickly before we wrap up too, vice captain and captain options. What are you looking at this week?
There's a few options. I'd say Archie Roberts, I think, gets my vibe. I don't think I'll get anyone from the Hawthorn Adelaide game, that's for sure. Rankin, Rochelle, Dawson, not really interested. Archie Roberts definitely, I think, could get a big score on Dreamtime at the G, considering that Sinclair went berserk against him, got a 140. I could see Roberts getting about 180 against him. Unfortunately, for Richmond supporters, Freo, St Kilda. Look, I don't think I'd want to go Jackson at all, just because I could see Marshall and De Koning nullifying him quite effectively. And then the other options, realistically speaking, Pies, West Coast. I mean, if you want to be brave, go Houston, because I could see him doing quite well at the G in a big game, but I wouldn't go there as a captaincy at all. Maybe a vice captaincy out of the blue. Port, Butters definitely against the Blues is one, and I think to be safe, probably going to go, I'd say my own side, Roberts into Butters, or if you didn't have Roberts, I'd go Butters, because Butters plays Saturday night and then Melbourne Dogs Sunday. So, for me, I'd go Roberts into Butters, and then if you don't have Roberts, I'd go VC Butters into Gawn or Grundy. How about you?
Could you actually genuinely put it on McAndrew tomorrow night? Like, is that actually a genuine McAndrew? Like, is that actually a genuine option?
I reckon he's going to go pretty well, because he showed against Sherry he can't bloody leap, that he does all right. But Lloyd Meek and stuff is not the best ruckman going around. So I could see McAndrew doing quite well. But, I don't see I could see McAndrew getting on 100, that's for sure, but not a 130. So, but who's your VC and C quickly?
So I haven't actually decided yet. So I'm looking on Friday night, and I do quite like those Essendon. The Essendon lineup. They've got to start somewhere, Essendon. I know they've been shocking all year, except for one game, or sort of a 6-quarter patch there in the sort of around the Dogs in the Melbourne game.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they've got to start somewhere in terms of their thing. They've got a favourable run the next few weeks, so I think Archie Roberts, if I had him, I would definitely be putting the vice captaincy on him. But unfortunately, I don't. So I think perhaps I'm going to look at Merritt.
Yeah, that's another good one.
just as a bit of an option because I don't think Richmond are in the position where they can necessarily tag. And then, obviously, as I said, I think Petrarca is a genuine left of centre vice captaincy option this week against North Melbourne, as long as he doesn't cop the Finn Sullivan tag. I probably wouldn't be touching anyone from the Geelong-Sydney game. I don't think I would be going down the Nick Dacos path for Collingwood. And then, I think depending on what happens with Tim English, if he gets named, then I might reassess. But at this stage, I've got the captaincy on Gawn. So I have gone Merritt into Gawn for mine.
Yeah, I think Merritt's an underrated option. I still think against someone like Richmond, he could go bananas. Richmond are decimated with injuries, and someone like a Merritt or a Roberts, just because of the amount of possessions they can amass, I think it could go quite well on Friday night. That's for sure an important game. But that's all we got time for. Hopefully, stay cool, stay warm in this cooler months coming up, and hopefully, for your SuperCoach team's sake, there's not too many injuries on the horizon because, our premiums are definitely misfiring at the moment. But hopefully they lift their game come the buys, which will definitely be an interesting watch, that's for sure. But other than that, we'll catch you on the flip side of round 11.